Segment 3, how to fight a Cold War. You've drawn up a list. You mentioned this a moment ago, but I want to go through it. You've drawn up a list of the rules or principles that informed the dissident movement in the Soviet Union. Let's go through a few of these. Nonviolent resistance to a violent regime. Why not engage in acts of sabotage?
Because
Why not be like the IRS in Northern Ireland?
Well, first of all, if you ask me personally, I disagree on it on moral and principle grounds, but if you ask it as a practical question, which is very important, the answer is very simple. Because the violence is strength of the KGB and the Soviet communism. You actually would always lose if you use their weapon. Look, we were talking about superpower which had more arms than the United States of America. I mean, it's very naive to think that you can, with several shotguns or, I don't know, pistols, you can fight against the country with hundreds of thousands of nuclear missiles. So that's important, but never, if you have very strong opponent, never try to compete with this opponent on its territory. Try to choose what is really weak.
Human rights. Human rights is the primary concern and uniting principle.
Absolutely. That's a death blow, because what communism is about is total denial of human rights. It cannot afford any human rights. I mean, it cannot afford any political and civil rights. Let's say that communism always claims that it provides to people social, economic rights, but it totally denies political and civil rights. That's a death blow for communism, you know, and it totally undermines legitimacy of the communist system. When you start to hold it accountable on that matter, it has nothing to say and defend.
So here's what, you read Lenin and you read Trotsky, you read all the founding revolutionaries, and over and over again they're talking about inventing a new kind of human being, the new Soviet man, the entirely new set of values. So there are two puzzles here for me. One is, where did Yuri and Sakharov and Sharansky, where did you get your notion of human rights? Was it to some extent religious? Are you read it? What are you? Where do you pick up the principles of human rights? And then the second is, it seems to me that by arguing human rights, your premise is that there's something even in the KGB, you are touching something within them.
Yes. That
at some level they know you're right.
Absolutely. And that's actually was our main force, that we actually corrupted, that helped to corrupt this whole system on the top. And when you look into some memoirs which were written after 91 by some top Soviet official, particularly by Alexander Yakovlev, he recognizes in his writing how important was reading of our documents and our statements by the top leaders of Communist Party and even KGB. We spoiled them. Now, how we learned about human rights? Well, Peter, the answer number one is, I believe it's very natural thing. It's kind of comes with us naturally for human beings, so the idea of human rights.
Natural law. You're a believer in
that? Pretty much so. But also we were quite educated people. And even in the absence of many things which were published officially in the Soviet Union, you could still read a lot of things from which we were very well read on Western civilization, you know, so we knew and understood many things. So it wasn't that we were totally isolated from any information.
Here's another one of your principles or rules. Moral resistance. Moral resistance. High principles of ethics and honor. Now, this is another puzzle for me, because you've already explained that the core, or at least one of the most important elements of the dissident movement, was made up of scientists.
Yes.
And in this country, academics tend to stay away from the categories of moral imperatives.
Right.
And you're embracing them.
Absolutely.
You're saying right and wrong matter.
Absolutely. You cannot be dissident without moral imperative. As I told you in the beginning, if you are not ready to die for standing for being dissident, you will be broken I mean, your only weapon is resolve. You cannot get such resolve. And KGB knew and felt it well enough, to diagnose, who is who and how strong you are, and if you are not strong enough, you will be broken.
In some perverse way, the KGB was good at what they did.
Well, yes, yeah. I mean, they
knew.
In that perverse way, they were actually. I mean, they would test everyone, but they would feel, if they feel that the person is strong, they wouldn't actually even try to test. They could imprison him. They would imprison most of such people because they had to, but they would realize that they cannot break this person. Now, what can give you such resolve if not moral imperative? What can give you readiness to die for that cause if not a moral imperative? Well, scientists can also have moral, that's a discovery which you can learn from dissidence community in the Soviet Union. But we realize, but you maybe have to live through communism, which totally denies the whole concept of good and evil, to realize how those things are important for human being and for human society.
Yuri, was it an evil empire?
Absolutely.